Welcome, listener, to another night in the archives. The hour grows late, but the fire is still warm, and the shelves, ever restless, have offered up something curious once again. I am the Archivist, and it's my duty, or perhaps it is my obsession, to uncover the forgotten fragments of our realms. Letters, journals, missives that were never sent. The quiet voices that history almost let slip away. Tonight I'll read to you one such piece. The parchment is fragile, the words, they're heavy with time, but if we listen carefully, perhaps we can hear the echoes of the soul who wrote them, and the world that they once belonged to. So then, let us begin. I have before me a collection of papers, 2 letters, and the record of the archivist that discovered them both. I cannot recall how they came into my possession, but I will start with the words of a fellow scholar. Part 1. The Archivist's Promise. To whoever listens to this record, this is Archivist Elaine Vero, keeper of the Northern Stacks. And what I hold before me tonight are 2 letters, both unsigned, both unclaimed, both written by hand on weathered vellum that still carries the faint scent of pine resin and old wax. The ink is faded, but not vanished. The handwriting trembles in the first, steady and practiced in the second. And between them, there is a story. The first letter was found sealed inside a ranger's journal, unearthed from the ruins of an old watch post along the Emberline Forest. Its pages were half burnt. The wax seal melted and fused to the leather binding. The second was tucked behind the false panel of an oak desk in a cottage near the Valley of Riversmeet. Carefully folded, wrapped in cloth, as if waiting for someone who never came. By the ink, by the phrasing, and by the hand, I believe they belong to each other and together. The first, a final letter home. The second, an answer that never reached him. I've read them more times than I should admit, and every time I find myself listening for the silence between the lines. There is something achingly human about these letters. They are not history's grand decrees, nor the formal proclamations of kings. They are just whispers, 2 souls reaching for one another across distance and death. You can almost feel the rain in the ink. The first letter, written by a ranger on the eve of his final patrol. His words, simple, steady, like footfalls on wet earth. He doesn't speak of glory or duty, only of love, and the wish that his last thoughts would find their way home. And somehow they did. The second letter bears no address. It was never sent. But the words, they carry the weight of loss. The writer speaks to him as though he were still out there, walking the trails, listening to the wind. What struck me most was not the grief. It was the peace. The way she, or perhaps he, it is hard to tell, speaks of the forest as if it keeps him, as if death to one who loved the wilds was not an ending, but a return. I catalog artifacts every day. Swords, maps, decrees, coins, even bones. But these letters, they are alive in a way none of those things are. They hum quietly, not with magic, but with memory. And perhaps that is the oldest magic of all. You see, there's something peculiar about ink on paper. It doesn't just record a thought, it traps a heartbeat. When you read it, it beats again. And sitting here, in the silence of the archive, I could almost swear I heard two heartbeats. The record will note them as anonymous correspondence, circa the Fourth Era. But I think that does them a disservice. These letters are not anonymous, they are intimate. Their names have simply gone back to the wind. Still, I find myself wanting to give them titles. The first, I call The Ranger's Goodbye. The second, The Letter That Was Never Sent. And this one, perhaps, is The Archivist's Promise, because I will keep them safe. Filed under private correspondence, preserved with care. Bound in linen, sealed with gold thread, not because they are relics, but because they are proof that even in the quietest corners of history, love endures. And that, perhaps, is what history truly is. Not the battles, nor the crowns, but the small words between people that refuse to be forgotten. So, if you ever wander into the northern stacks, and you find a small wooden box, marked only with a ranger's sigil, you'll know what lies inside. 2 letters, 1 heart, beating twice. And perhaps, if you listen closely, you'll still hear them. In the whisper of turning pages, or in the hush of falling rain. Good night, Ranger. Good night, Keeper. And good night to the wilds that hold you both. I have before me a letter. It was found sealed inside a ranger's journal, unearthed from the ruins of an old watch post along the Emberline Forest. Its pages were half burnt, the wax seal melted and fused to the leather binding. Part 2. The Ranger's Last Letter Home. My dearest, if this letter ever reaches you, it means the road has carried me farther than I can walk back from. Don't let that trouble your heart too much. The wilds have always been my truest home. You knew that, better than anyone. I just wish I could have told you one more story before the trail grew quiet. I'm writing this beneath the boughs of a tall northern pine, the ones that smell like rain and catch the light in their needles. The fire beside me burns low, the smirk curling into the mist, and somewhere below I can hear the river whispering against the stones. It's funny, I used to think the forest was silent at night, but I've learned that it isn't silence at all. It's the sound of the world listening. The owls call across the valley, the wind drifts between the branches. Every sound folds into another, like threads in a great woven song. I've come to love that kind of quiet, the kind that doesn't ask anything from you, except to be present. If you could see it now, you'd understand why I stayed so long out here. The moonlight drapes itself across the moss, turning everything silver. Even my arrows catch the glow, like they remember the sunlight they were carved beneath. Sometimes I think, that's what we're all doing out here, trying to remember the light. Done my best to keep the borders safe. The villages, the trails, the wild paths that no map remembers anymore. I've tracked the beasts that wandered too close. I've guided travelers when the rivers rose too high. I've spoken to ghosts, and to worse things that only half remembered they were ever human. But I did what I could, and I would do it again, because someone has to listen to the things the world forgets. But lately, the woods have grown quiet in a different way. The birds don't sing at dawn, the deer have vanished deeper inland, and there's something older here, something that watches. I think I've finally met what's been waiting for me all along. Don't be afraid for me, love. I'm not afraid. The world doesn't end here. It just changes shape. And I'm ready for that. If the seasons turn, and I don't come home, plant a tree by the gate. Tall one, the kind that bends with the wind but never breaks. Let it grow strong, and when the wind stirs its branches, you'll know I'm there, whispering through the leaves, reminding you that the forest remembers. Tell the others that I went where the light fades slowest. Tell them the woods are still beautiful, even in their silence. And tell them to listen. Really listen. If they do, they'll hear the same song I do now. The heartbeat of the wild places. The rhythm of everything that was, and everything that will be again. Thank you for loving me enough to let me wander. Thank you for waiting as long as you did. And if you ever find yourself standing at the edge of the forest at dusk, and the wind brushes your cheek just so, that's me, still keeping watch, still walking the line between the wild and the hearthfire. I'll see you again when the trail bends back towards the sunrise. Until then, listen for the wind and know that I love you. Beyond roads, beyond seasons, beyond the turning of the leaves. Good night, my heart. Good night. Penned by an unknown ranger of the Northern Reach. I have before me a letter, found tucked behind a false panel of an oak desk in a cottage near the valley of Riversmeet, in the Fourth Era. Part 3, a letter that was never sent. I wasn't sure I should write this. Letters are meant to travel, after all. And you're far beyond where parchment and ink can reach. But I keep thinking, maybe the words will still find you. Maybe they'll slip between the trees, ride the wind you loved so much, and find their way to wherever you've gone. So here it is, one last letter from home. Dear heart, the hills have begun to thaw. Snowmelt runs through the stones in silver ribbons, and the first crocus has pushed its way through the mud by the fence post. And you'd have smiled to see it, and you always said it looked like courage in bloom. The birds returned early this year, a restless flock sweeping over the valley, calling out as if searching for someone. I watched them for hours, thinking maybe they were calling for you. The cabin feels emptier than I expected. Every shelf still holds your tools, Your bow still rests by the door. Sometimes, I swear I hear it. That small creak it made when you picked it up. They said you didn't suffer, that it was quick, that your watch ended beneath the pines you loved. I try to believe them. Truly, I do. But I still wake at dawn, half expecting to see your shadow against the light, stooping to tie your boots, muttering about the state of the trails. The forest keeps its silence well. It will keep you too, I think. Do you remember that night by the river, when the fire went out and we just sat, watching the fog move like ghosts across the water? You told me the wilds were kinder than most people believed, that they only seemed cruel to those who never listened. I didn't understand then. I think I understand now. The wind in the trees isn't cruel. The rain on the roof isn't lonely. They're just the world's way of speaking softly, the same way you did. I keep your compass on my desk. The needle still quivers, still points north, even though there's nowhere left for me to go. But perhaps that's the trick, isn't it? You never followed the compass for direction. You followed it for purpose. And maybe that's what I have to do now too. They brought me your last letter. I read it until the words blurred. Good night, my heart, good night. I've whispered it back to you every night since. There's a kind of peace in that rhythm, a heartbeat that hasn't quite forgotten its pair. And when I speak it, it feels like you're still listening. And if you are, then know this. You were loved, not just for your courage, but for your quiet. For the way you made stillness feel like safety. For the way you could look at a storm and see only the beauty. I think that's all for tonight. The candles burning low, and the rains beginning to fade. If these words reach you, let them be a lantern in the dark. A small reminder that home still remembers your name. And if they don't, then maybe they'll simply drift, like the seeds you used to scatter in the spring, carried by the wind until something new begins to grow. I'll tend that garden for both of us. Good night, my love. Good night, my ranger. Until the paths cross again, sleep well. Another letter returned to silence. I often wonder what became of those whose words we've just read, whether their stories ended in peace, or if their echoes still linger, waiting for someone, anyone, to remember. But for now, this one will rest here, among the other voices of the forgotten. Thank you for keeping me company tonight, here amongst the dust and the candlelight. If you'd like to hear more of the stories I've uncovered, the archives are always open. You need only listen. And if you have stories that you would like to add to the archive, or know where I can unearth more, send your missives by courier or scrying stone. Until next time, traveler.